right.
Hey, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Let's go ahead and do questions and answers. So anything goes. You're going to unmute yourself or type in.
Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
Hey, Kathy.
Hi, I have a couple questions because I missed a couple of the last sessions. So number one, it'll come back to me.
Okay. Sahajananda?
Yeah, hi.
Hello.
I was at the weekend course this weekend, which is amazing.
Nice. Yeah,
And what happened to me both evenings after the course is I got what I call visual migraines, which I sort of self-diagnosed it because I don't really know what that is, but that it's, both eyes, I'm seeing geometric patterns that sort of take over pieces of my vision. And it happened also the last course I did with you, which was a spa weekend. And I don't know what's going on. I've had them for years.
Right. So, and you have them often or no?
I have a what?
Do you have them often?
I have them sporadically, and that's why I can't figure it out. I thought it had to do with looking at the computer, but I had a job for the past 2 years doing a lot of computer work, and they never came. It was during the courses, and sometimes they just spring up.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's no pain involved, right? It's just, you're just having the visual disturbances, but there's absence of...
Mostly it's just visual. Yeah.
Okay. Do you ever get a migraine?
No.
Okay. So you're just having the visual disturbances.
Yeah. Which is really weird.
And is there any sort of neck issue or back issue, back pain?
I mean, I've always had like chronic low back pain, which I take care of, through yoga and stuff like that. But
okay.
I could say my neck is tight, but it's not uncomfortably, anything unusual.
Yeah. I mean, it's still like a mechanism that's associated with migraines. That you're not having the pain is quite the blessing, but still the visual disturbances can still cause problems. And so let me think about this for a second. Yeah, probably a compression. What about how's your breathing? Do you have like a shallow breath at all, or rapid breath? Do you have anxiety ever, or anything like that that's breath related?
I wouldn't say no.
Okay.
I mean, I may have, short breaths when I'm anxious about something, but it's not like...
Yeah, but just like when anxiety pops up, but like you don't ever have like your breath's compromised and you start having anxiety, anything like that?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I just found it was really weird to have it after both days of the course. And that's why I wanted to ask.
Yeah. I mean, you are doing a lot of breathing. What about your jaws? Like the jaws tight at all, or clench at night, or grind your teeth at night, anything like that?
No.
Okay.
Not that I know of.
Yeah. I mean, you'd kind of know if you're having teeth grinding issues, your jaws would be a little bit sore in the morning, or they'd be always really kind of tight, and you'd be trying to stretch your jaws out, Is the scalp tender at all when like you touch it or anything like that on either side?
No.
Okay. And what's stress levels like? Like you have a lot of stress or not a lot of stress?
I have, I'd say medium stress.
Like moderate amount of stress,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh. And any sort of digestive issue, digestive complaints at all, that especially if it's significant, minor digestive issues, not that big of a deal, but anything, kind of significant or major?
No,
Okay. You ever get hiccups a lot?
I get hiccups, but not a lot. I mean, maybe once every 3 months or so.
Okay, that's not very much. Yeah. Okay.
Stumping.
Well, I mean, the thing with migraines is there's multiple causes of migraines, and then you have a visual migraine where the nerves are being compressed. A lot of times, what happens when you have a nerve that's being compromised, a moderate amount of pressure on the nerve will cause the nerve to be excited, and a lot of pressure on the nerve actually causes the nerve to go to sleep. And so, like when you sit on your foot, for example. And so when you're getting the visual disturbances, there's a moderate amount of pressure on a nerve that's, basically stimulating the visual disturbances. And so, if it can be stress related, it could have a digestive issue, there could be spasms or tension in the diaphragm, there could be misalignments in the neck. Migraine simply means pain on one side of the head. And so it's usually a nerve pain. And so that you're getting it even in both eyes is kind of interesting.
Mhm.
Like your shoulder here, like where you touch, where your neck and shoulder kind of come, there's always that little kind of tender spot. Is that really sort of tender on you at all, or?
No.
No? Okay,
No.
what about pain in your ears? Do you have pain in your ears at all?
No.
Okay. Any times you get dizzy or have vertigo?
That's interesting because I get vertigo very infrequently, but that same night as the visual
Yeah.
migraine came,
Okay.
I also got just the beginning of vertigo. I could feel it happening.
So, okay. So I would say that it's probably tied to, I mean, this is one of those things where you just start treating and you kind of see where it goes.
Mhm.
And so that's why I'm asking all these like weird questions, is like, it helps me kind of pinpoint like where should we start with the treatment, because otherwise you're just taking stabs in the dark and you kind of don't know, you treat something, you move on. But so there can be tension in the diaphragm, which can be even tied to autonomic function, which is tied to like the action of fight, flight, and activity, and then rest and repair, and time for sleeping. And so sometimes there can be an imbalance in this system that then causes issues with the breathing.
Mhm.
But anytime you have tension in the diaphragm, part of what it does is it activates these two rope muscles on each side of your neck. Because these two rope muscles, they're called the sternocleidomastoid, they help elevate the rib cage when you're breathing, when you're in the phase of inspiration, when you're taking in air. And when the diaphragm is really super tight, these muscles have to work harder than normal to elevate the rib cage. Now, these muscles actually can cause autonomic dysfunction as well when they're tight, and they actually pass over the carotid sinus, so they'll affect like blood flow to the head and things like this. So it's even like when you're dealing with like a lot of mucus or a lot of respiratory stuff up in the nasal passages, and you're having to breathe past the mucus, you're straining a little bit harder with the the sternocleidomastoid to elevate the rib cage because you're not getting that easy breath. And so a lot of what people would call like sinus pain, like in or around the eyes and in the ear, is actually referred pain patterns from the sternocleidomastoid. It's usually not the sinuses themselves, but referred pain from the trigger point activity in the neck. And so I would say a couple of things to address this, that you got at both times when we did the class, you're doing a lot of breathing with the class. I mean, obviously you just went through the class. So, and what can happen is, maybe the breathing actually aggravated the tension in and around where that nerve is being compressed because of having to breathe so much. And if the diaphragm's a little tight, or if the sternocleidomastoid is tight, which usually they go hand in hand, it could cause a disturbance. So the thing that I would do, you have like a couple of options. Probably the first option would be the use of larch. If you didn't have larch, you could use hyssop decumbens. You could also use hyssop. You could also use Sitka, but larch would probably be my first choice for you. And with that, I would take a few long, slow, deep breaths. And then after a few long, slow, deep breaths, I'd like have you hold your breath, with the air in, and then turn like side to side a lot.
Right.
This will help loosen up the diaphragm. The oil itself will help loosen up the diaphragm, but the movement will also help loosen up the diaphragm. And when you start to take those longer, slower, deeper breaths, it will also start to relax the sternocleidomastoid or the muscles in your neck. So I would do larch with just inhalation, but I would probably also put, you could use like marjoram, you could use ginger, you could use, you could actually even use something like black pepper, and mix it in with a little lotion or massage oil and actually rub it on the neck, especially from the ear, like down towards your collarbone. I would hit a little bit on the backside as well, as far as you could, and on the neck and shoulder, but I'm more concerned about this area from behind your ear down to your collarbone and your sternum. Like if you kind of poke around, you can kind of feel like these two ropey muscles that come down. And pay attention to your jaws a little bit too, like over the next week or two. A lot of migraines, see, like you're in this like gray area. Like if you're having migraines, I'd really look at the jaw pretty substantially, but you're having just the visual disturbances. And so it could be some issue with the jaw, and there could not be some issue with the jaw. And so that you're not really complaining of jaw issues. I wouldn't go too hard into that unless there starts to be an issue. You could also augment this treatment. So you're going to rub like marjoram or ginger or black pepper, something that has an antispasmodic quality to it, but also improve circulation for those muscles. And if you wanted to augment, lobelia would be, this would be an herb that you would, you can't really find in a health food store. You'd have to go online, like to Amazon, and get capsules. And you would just take like maybe one capsule twice a day. It would relax the diaphragm, relax the muscles in the neck somewhat. That's the possibility. But one of the things that gets used a lot for migraines, which might bring some benefit to you, is there's an herb called feverfew, like fever and then the word few, but together.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah. And so I would take 2 or 3 capsules of that 1 to 2 times a day. And you know, it's relaxing into the muscle, it's antispasmodic, but especially of the neck and the head. And sometimes you can get some relief from migraines from just taking the feverfew, and that you're not having pain. I would say maybe it's going to work, maybe it's not. But I mean, it would definitely take some tension down out of the body, and you know, we can always use that regardless if there's a health issue or not. So I mean, it could be something that, you know, might make the body feel a little bit better. But you know, you could do it in pieces so you can tell what's working and what's not. But those would be the things that I would try for the migraine. Now, if it was, or it's not even a migraine, it's visual disturbances, but it's in the arena of a migraine. And so, you know, a lot of times with migraines, we will take something like yarrow or peppermint or something and put it in alcohol, and then, you know, shake it up and then rub it all over the neck and shoulders and even over the back and everything. That can be very helpful, but that's usually more about pain management. The yarrow is antispasmodic and very, very anti-inflammatory. Anytime you have compression in the head with like a visual disturbance like this or migraines, I mean, we're always looking at some sort of inflammation to be present. And so the yarrow can be helpful with that. But given that you have a bit of a history of vertigo and dizziness, I would stick with what we're talking about first before you start looking at some other options. So do the larch or hyssop decumbens, you know, inhalation, and yeah, something on the neck, and just see where you're at with that. You could add the feverfew a little bit after that, or the lobelia. I mean, you could even take both of those. But like I like the idea of just doing little bits at a time, so you can see what actually is bringing you the relief, and then you're able to better treat it, you know, next time. And so the concern would be that this doesn't escalate and turn into like a bad headache or a migraine, but that you've had it for a while. Like I would say, if it was going to turn into a migraine, it probably already would have. And you know, people get these visual disturbances. I mean, it's basically called a visual migraine. It's just you don't have the pain. But see, even migraine means one-sided, like it's, you know, on one side of the head, and that you're getting the disturbances on both eyes. It's still not acting completely normal. I mean, that's not super abnormal, but it's, you know, I wouldn't even call it a visual migraine. I mean, there's visual disturbances. And so, you have any balance issues? Like when you're walking, do you bump into things or lose your balance really easily?
No, not usually.
Okay. Yeah, I would stick with what we're saying, and I know it's a bunch of weird questions I'm asking you, but like each one kind of takes me down a rabbit hole if it's a yes.
Right,
And
right.
you're not really having a lot of them, and so you know, back in the old days when we would treat migraines, we would do a lot of jaw work. You know, we would do a lot of work on the jaws, and most times that would reduce the migraines quite substantially, because it would impact the autonomic nervous system. It would actually even affect like blood pressure and adrenal function and things like that. And so there was usually a direct correspondence with migraines and jaw issues. Also, some of the muscles right at the base of the skull on the back side. But usually there would be some grinding present, like some bruxing or grinding at night, and to the point where it would be disturbing your sleep. And so, do you ever wake up in the middle of the night for any reason? Or
Yeah, I do wake up in the middle of the night, but it's not because I'm grinding my teeth. I know that.
right, it's just like you're flipping around and you wake up.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, everybody does that. And so, or you get up and go to the bathroom, or that's no big indicator of something. I mean, the other thing that you can always add to anything that's like jaw related, headache related, is taking 400 or 500 milligrams of magnesium a day. This helps to reduce like tension and spasms in the soft tissue. Probably wouldn't resolve anything, but it might lessen some of the symptoms. But I feel pretty good about like where we're starting with this, and so start with that and see what happens. And this is one of the things is like when you're really troubleshooting something like this, where it's not really super straightforward, the treatment, you go through and you treat it for like, several days or a week or something. And even if it doesn't produce a result or change things a whole bunch, you're still making the body feel better. You're still increasing and improving function in an area. And it tells you something, even if there's no shift or change, it still is like certain things are getting crossed off a list. And so, always deepening the breath. I mean, there's a handful of things that like usually improve, any sort of health issue. And, one is deepening the breath. Another one is cleaning up the blood, purifying the blood. Start looking at body alignment, things like that. And, it can start to get complicated, but doing what we're talking about is going to improve some things that it improves this particular issue. I mean, I think it will, but even if it doesn't, things will still get better in some other areas, and it'll be easier to treat in the long run. Right. When you have like a kind of an odd issue, you just, sometimes the thing you do is you just start going through and fixing stuff, like, okay, let's improve the breath, let's improve this, let's improve, and you just start hitting things. And it sometimes it's not even like one particular thing that did it, it's just several things kind of put together actually produce the result. So let's have you try this, and then maybe report back in a week or so.
Okay, that sounds great. I mean, the thing I want to say is it's such a bizarre thing.
It's a weird thing. Yeah,
and it only happens sometimes, but I can never. The most consistent I can say is that it happened during your courses.
Yeah,
at the an hour or two after we finished, and I was like, wow, this is
we're moving a lot of energy. So there's that part, but there's also a lot of breathing. Like a little bit more breathing than normal. And that's what makes me think it's like your diaphragm and the sternocleidomastoid. Like it, and that you have a little bit of a history. I mean, it doesn't even sound like a strong history, but that you've been prone to vertigo. Most times vertigo is the sternocleidomastoid causes disturbances in the inner ear. And so it's most likely it's probably that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Keep us posted. Yeah.
Okay, great. I will.
Go ahead, try again, Kathy. And then Marianne.
Thanks. I have been working on leaky gut, and I got back a test that said I have a lot of two particular pathogens that are kind of overrun. Now, I do take Palmarosa oil, a couple drops every other day or something. Is there anything else I should do to kind of address that? I mean, I work on diet, and stuff like that, of course.
And has the symptoms improved? Is it the same?
Well, I don't really have the symptoms. I have some gas. It was mostly a surprise. All of a sudden, I've been working on this. I've been taking this certain new drink and protocol. and things are improving as far as constipation and stuff. But all of a sudden, the test came back with, diagnosing all the different bacteria that you need to have in your gut. But there were 2 pathogens that I didn't know about, actually. I didn't particularly complain about it, just happened to come up. It was a surprise, actually.
Yeah. Do you ever take cinnamon?
No.
We could go a couple of routes with this.
Okay.
Like you could try doing cinnamon, like a drop or 2 of cinnamon in water, like probably
Now, is
in the morning.
cassia? Would cassia be?
Yeah,
the same?
cassia would work. Yeah,
'Cause I
cassia
have
would
that.
work.
Okay.
Yeah, you use cassia. Do the cassia like maybe 2 drops in water and drink that kind of daily. I mean, it can fight bacterias and things, and even viruses down in the gut. And it does stimulate some of the digestive processes. Usually I would go to thyme. Thyme would be something that you would use in a similar way, but
I just got time. Let me see which one. I think you're right.
yeah, like I mean, if you want to start with thyme and then work over to cassia, you could do that as well. That you're not really having symptoms except for like on the test, you're gonna have to just kind of treat it for a while and then go back and see, what they say.
The one
But,
I have is Thimethusionol.
Yeah, that should be fine. Yeah, it's actually even that's a really good one because it's gentle, and you can actually do even a little bit bigger dosages if you needed to.
So should I take the cassia daily and the thyme daily?
Let's have you start with the thyme. Let's have you start with the thyme, and do 2 to 3 drops in water daily, and again, you're not having real symptoms except for the results in the test. So we'll have you do it for a couple weeks and just kind of see how you're doing with it and everything. Are you getting retested anytime soon?
Yes, actually, I have a test pending to check it out because the other test was a couple months ago. So.
Okay, so perfect. So let's have you do the Thimethusionol. If that doesn't seem to be cutting it, then we'll have you switch over to the cassia. But for right now, let's just have you stick with the Thimethusionol, and still keep doing the Palmarosa.
And do those daily. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I would do them daily. Yeah. I mean, if you're tolerating it okay, you could actually even do the Thimethusionol twice a day. The red thyme and the white thyme can be a little bit too strong to be doing on a daily basis. It can be a little bit much on the gut, but Thimethusionol, Geranol, Lenolol, all of those, they're much softer.
Okay.
And so you can do bigger dosages of them. And so I would stick with that and see. So here's the other option, and you could do this instead of, or you could do it on top of, like, you can do them both. Is you could use Goldenseal Root. You get it, from a health food store. I would do capsules rather than tincture. It's a really bitter herb, but Goldenseal.
I actually sometimes take it as a tea, and I know it's bitter, but I do it for medicinal reasons, so I usually can chug it down.
Okay.
But should I do capsules then instead of the tea?
If you're doing the tea, boy, you're
not
hardcore.
Regularly. I'll start doing it regularly.
I would make it maybe a little bit stronger or drink it a little bit more often, but Goldenseal is really incredible for the gut. and very good for bacteria and things in the gut.
Okay.
And so very good for lymphatic function in the gut. It can really help to resolve a lot of things down in the gut. And
Perfect.
so if you're already doing the tea, I would say just maybe drink more of the tea.
Well, let me tell you, I've done the tea. I don't do it regularly now that you've mentioned it. So would tablets be better than tea? It'd probably be more.
I'd like to see you maybe do it like daily for maybe, like the thing with Goldenseal, like if you're doing it daily, after about 2 or 3 weeks, take a break for a week or so, just because, I mean, it's really good at killing bacteria. And after a while, it starts going after the good bacteria.
Oh, okay.
And so, you know, just take a break from it. But like if I'm like traveling and starting to feel sick, you know, I do all my oils, but I always travel with some Goldenseal. I mean, I'll take 3 or 4 capsules a couple of times a day. I mean, it just wipes out the mucus in the gut. You know, it kills a lot of the bacteria that, you know, you are potentially exposed to. And so can be very, very helpful in treating anything immune related, as long as there's not a super strong autoimmune issue. If there's a super strong autoimmune issue, I would back off
There's
of
not.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Then you're good.
I just wouldn't want to destroy the good bacteria because I've been working to.
If you take a break after 2 to 3 weeks of doing the Goldenseal, it shouldn't be an issue.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And then another question I had is I treated myself and finally bought Poplar Blossom. And,
good for you.
but I'm gonna, you know, I'm a little miserly with it. I just open it and smell it. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wonder what would be, and I bought it for kind of spirit from when you describe it, spiritual reasons. So what would be a
Sure,
good practice to fully utilize it without diffusing or taking a bath in it?
Yeah. So yeah, like inhaling it out of the bottle is pretty solid. And so there's a whole range of things you could do. You could do the respiratory pattern, you know, the sinus pattern.
Is that the ear, the inner ear and all that?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
You could do that one. You could also do the psychological pattern that goes like heart, crown, you know, solar plexus. It's very good for releasing like old like lower emotions, but especially like trauma related. And sometimes we're releasing traumas that we're not even really aware of that are even there. Like, you know, they're like low grade trauma. Or like, you know, the term that I used to use like 20, 25 years ago is I called them micro traumas, you know, things that you didn't register, but, you know, there was some sort of traumatic response. And sometimes it can actually be even physical pain. Physical pain will cause like these little micro traumas. And so it helps clean that out. The other one is to do the blood purification pattern. Oh boy, that's a really good one with the poplar. And then the cranial pattern, you know, where you do throat minor, back throat, jaws, temple.
Which one for trauma? Because I've been looking at trauma. It comes up a lot lately and people offering ways to release it. So which pattern?
Psychological pattern.
Okay.
I'll actually give that to Samantha right now so she can post it.
Perfect.
So
that would be the one mostly for traumas, and then I'll get all the other.
Yeah,
too.
poplar is amazing. Like poplar and helichrysum are amazing for trauma-related things.
Yeah, I might on my second bottle of helichrysum because that's beautiful.
Yeah. Poplar was actually in the old days was an anointing oil. Okay, hold on.
No, I've been listening to you talk about it, and I finally decided that that would be my little treat.
Okay, so here you go.
Thank you.
Okay, I just sent it to her, and so she'll get that up for you. And
okay, and then one final question is, I have recently been introduced just slightly through something I listened to about flower essences. And I'm wondering how do flower essences compare to oils? And I have no idea about essence.
Yeah. So the thing with flower essences is they're kind of like more of a homeopathic approach. They're very good at soothing certain responses in the body. They can be very good for that. It's very different than essential oils, but you wouldn't want to mix them together like in the same concoction, but you could use them like in the same day, like if you were using flower essence and some essential oils. They don't quite have the cleansing effect that, or the fortifying effect that the oils do, but they're incredibly soothing. They're very, very soothing. And so you could use them for that, and they usually have like some little phrase that they are associated with, and you kind of stay within those parameters. They're pretty good. If you think about like physiological emotions, you're dealing with agitation in the physical body, the emotional body, sometimes mostly the physical body, and the flower essences can have kind of a calming effect on some of that agitation that can be specific to the condition or the thought process that they're talking about. It doesn't really release something, but it does calm down the agitation. And so years ago, I used to use flower essences quite a bit, but I think they're a good tool.
I have no clue except that, there's oils are plants and flowers too. And I didn't quite get the, so.
Yeah, it's like the flower essences are more like the energy of the plant, where the essential oils are the energy of the plant, but you're also getting the chemistry. It's like a much more potent form of the plant. It's like the flower essences are almost the opposite end of the spectrum. There's very little of the plant or plant material in the essence itself. It's made more similar to a homeopathic preparation.
Okay.
And so you would get the energy of the plant, but not necessarily the chemistry of it. And so, you're still getting some impact, but it's they're plants, but they're very, very different.
Okay, great. Now this is just one silly, stupid question, then I'm done. Is every winter my back itches? Now I imagine that's a humidity problem, but the rest of my body doesn't, just my back. And I didn't know if that was some weird.
Yeah,
that could actually
be. So that could be a little bit of an autonomic response. You would see it a little bit more on the abdomen, but it could still happen on the back. So you could try treating this a couple of different ways. One way is to use anise or anise, however you want to say it, like a drop or two in water and taking it internally, or just lots of inhalations. That's one way to possibly resolve that. The other one would be to either apply lavender or chamomile, like a softer chamomile, like Roman chamomile, on the back. You can do it in a salt bath, but if the salt bath isn't cutting it, then just topical application to that. It should knock it out. I mean, that's what do they call that? Pruritus. It's just basically like the sensory nerves get a little bit agitated, and so.
Yeah, it's such a puzzle because in the summer it's fine, so I think it must be humidity, but I think my whole body should be dry, not just my back, and I don't feel dry.
That's what makes me think that it could be autonomic, and it could be that there's like any time there is stagnation in the lymphatic system, the direct response is overstimulation to sensory nerves. And so there could be some stagnant lymph that's in the back just when it gets cold, because you are going to get more constricted vessels and things in the body. And so it might manifest that way, so the anise would help if it's autonomic
Okay.
malfunction. The chamomile would probably help. I mean, the chamomile helps to soothe the nerves. Actually, Spanish sage might even work as well, but usually traditionally for pruritus, lavender and chamomile are usually the things to use. But you could also use something that would help stimulate lymphatic movement. So anything that you have that's lymphatic. So lymphatic blend, chocolate root
I have the lymphatic
cleanser,
blend.
yeah, birch, complex, anything that will move lymph. Even you taking the time internally, helichrysum, any of that applied to the area should be helpful for moving lymph. And when lymph is moving slow or stagnant in the body, one of the ways to really get lymph moving in the body is treating the skin. And so any of the oils that are good for the skin, like, coffee or parsley, even lavender can be helpful. Hyssop could be helpful for the skin. Helichrysum could be, but you're covering a large area, and helichrysum is a little pricey. So like I usually go for the simpler, less expensive things, like something like parsley or coffee.
I'd live with an itchy back rather than use poplar balsam on it.
Yeah. And so just do something that stimulates the like skin detoxification.
Okay.
And so anytime you do that, it starts to move the lymph in the body, and it starts the kidneys and liver and spleen to help detoxify. And so that usually will break up the stagnant lymph. You might even be able to get away with doing it with even lemongrass. That could be helpful as well. Even like bay laurel, like, as I'm thinking about this, like maybe even a eucalyptus, or usually when I'm trying to stimulate the skin, I go like coffee, parsley, celery, carrot, something like that. But even something like lavender and spikenard could probably do it. There's lots of ways to do the skin issue. You
I
could
have
also
coffee and
do,
parsley, so I can.
yeah.
use
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Then you go right for those, because those
Yeah.
are tried and true. And so one of the things that you can do is also take some salt, like just regular table salt, and mix a little bit of liquid soap in it, and then add some of the parsley or the coffee. Basically you're making a little bit of a salt scrub, and really just kind of scrub whatever you can kind of get to a little bit. You don't even have to do your whole body, but start the exfoliating with that, and that will really jumpstart the skin. And that might even help resolve it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
And then Marianne, then Christy.
Hi,
Hey, Marianne.
there's a lot of talk about releasing.
Mhm.
And I know that some of the oils encourage releasing. I
Mhm.
know what that means.
Mhm.
However, I think I'd like a deeper understanding of the process of releasing. I mean,
Sure.
that
Yeah.
doesn't mean the issue is resolved. You still have to work with whatever's released.
Right. Okay.
And
So
it's on different levels. And I think it's more complicated than
yes.
I initially thought.
Yeah. So releasing, you could look at it from a couple of different ways. So first we'll look at it from an energetic point of view. So another way of saying releasing would be cleansing, just like you inhale good oxygen and air, and then at some point you breathe out, and so you're releasing the old used up air. The same thing would happen with energy in the body. And so sometimes what happens when we're having a little bit of a health issue in a particular area, or emotional, mental, is that the area has gotten congested or energetically stagnant. And so that doesn't allow for fresh energy to come in and old energy to leave. It's just like if you were exhaling some air from your lungs, but you only released about 20%, then when it came time to breathe in again, you really only have the capacity to take in that 20% again, right? You can't take in another big, full, deep breath. And so whenever you're looking at that, you're basically looking at what you would call like blockages. You're releasing a blockage. And so that could be flow of energy through the body, through the meridians, which run like up and down the arms and legs and through the organs and things like this. So you're releasing a blockage in that area that allows energy to flow to feed all these different areas, or from the energy centers and the chakras themselves. And so when you start to look at it emotionally and mentally, releasing could be the letting go of an old emotion, like letting go of anger, letting go of hurt. It could be the release, the letting go of that, or the expelling of that, so that, say you have this much anger that you're dealing with, and if you're able to let go of some of that emotionally, the anger might go from here down to like there, and then again, you keep releasing it until pretty soon you think of that the situation that would trigger the anger or the angry response, and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, it doesn't really bother me anymore. So that would be the byproduct of releasing something, right? And then mentally, releasing would manifest as a reduction of repeated thoughts or thought processes, or a shift or change in attitudes, opinions, even beliefs to a certain extent, because a belief is just almost like a predetermined way to act or behave regardless of the information coming in. And so, sometimes beliefs are good and based on positive things, and sometimes they're a result of trauma and just repeated experiences. And so even the breaking down of the belief so that it can be rebooted to a more current way of thinking, instead of resorting back to the trauma time that could be 5, 10, 20, 30, even 40 years ago. And so releasing in the mental body would be a breaking down of thought processes, repeated thoughts, unwanted thoughts, opinions, beliefs, things like this. And so the difficulty is that sometimes parts of our body and our emotions and even the mind can be in an agitated place. And so, like if we look at what we just said at the mind, you're releasing content. There's pieces of information that you're letting go of, and even in the emotions, you're releasing like a feeling, right? But what can happen is there can be agitation in certain body systems, or something tied to generating physiological emotions, where it's in an agitated state, and it's not really related to the content of what happened. It's not related to the story. It's just that something happened. It caused the body to be agitated, and it will continue to keep generating, say, like a traumatic response or an anger response or feelings of despair, whatever it may be. And so, like there, you could say you're releasing something, but really in that particular case, you're calming down and soothing parts of the physiology, the emotional body, the mental body, so that it doesn't keep generating something over and over again, right? And then if you take a step back even from that, when we go through and we have our experiences, the stronger the emotion or the more repetitive the thought, we actually begin attracting energy from the environment that helps bring things into form. So the stronger the emotion attracts it, or if we keep thinking something over and over again, that will attract things and that will actually manifest in the body. And so another way of saying that would be conditioning. And so again, this could be tied to thought processes, but like here you're starting to see like behavior patterns, thought patterns, patterns in your life. Like you have a situation where like you have this interaction with a particular person or a group of people and you go, I can't stand this anymore. I'm done with this. And you leave and you go to another situation and it's brand new and you really looked at everything. And then a year goes by and you're kind of in that same pattern again. A lot of it is tied to the conditioning from the past. And so part of releasing sometimes is the breaking down of the conditioning. And so really what you're starting to do is you're starting to break down what you would call a thought form. Like when you think something repeatedly, it generates an emotion. And when you feel something, it generates a thought, right? So when you say like thought, you're really saying thought and emotion at the same time. So when you have a strong thought, that is still not a thought form. That is just the energy of your thought processes. It's generating a certain kind of energy. When it becomes strong enough, it starts to attract energy from the environment that then mixes with that thought and it becomes a thought form, right? So what happens when that happens is when it becomes a thought form, it's in materialization, it's in manifestation. And so it has a little bit of consciousness, it's not super bright, it's not super anything, but it's just, it wants to reproduce, it wants to re-experience things that is associated with what it is. It wants to expand and grow just like everything else that's in form. And so part of releasing when it comes to a psychological energy is the ability to break that down so that you separate the thought energy from the energy from the environment, right? You would also refer to it as an elemental, right? So you would separate the two, and that actually is a form of releasing. And so that is tied to your lymphatic function. Your lymphatic function is how your body breaks down old ways of thinking, old thought processes, old conditioning, so that it can constantly reboot and be in a more current situation. And so over a period of time, it can, if the lymphatic system is really functioning well, you'll notice that the mind is kind of dynamic. If the lymphatic system is really stagnant, it makes the mind really foggy and it makes it really hard to think. Some of it is the brain is just physically a little bit toxic, and some of it is there's so much of this conditioning that is actually slowing down some of the cognitive processes in the mind. And so when you do meditation, when you bring in points of like stillness, when you're chanting mantras, when you're doing intense prayer work, actually, even when you're just being super loving to, you know, anybody or anything, like, you're being loving towards even an animal or something. That actually displaces lower vibrational energy. And the lower vibrational energy that we're talking about is the energy from the environment or the elementals. And so even doing meditation would be releasing. And so if you think about it from the point of view of meditation, like when we are doing some of the breathing processes, and I'll say, okay, release, let go. You're letting go of what you are focused on or your attention at the moment. So you're letting go of the thought process in that moment, just to have a little bit of an expansion. And when you do that, you're actually displacing lower vibrational energies. And so, when you go through and you're directing energy through the body, you have focus, you have your attention on something. And then when you let the attention go, that's actually when the displacement would happen. And so a lot of meditations would have, you focus on something and then you release and let go, right? So that starts to be where there would be an expansion of consciousness. So really, when you get down to, be it that it's in meditation, be it that it's in the mental body, that it's in the emotional body, that it's even in the physical body, whenever you're saying the term release, what you're talking about is like the release of a fixation or a release of where your attention's at, but it usually is some sort of fixation of sorts. And there can start to be an expansion of awareness, consciousness, energy, however you would like to say it. And by doing that, it actually starts to displace lower vibrational energies, be it in the mental body, the emotional body, or in the physical body. So if you look at, like, say, okay, I have a bad shoulder, part of it is the muscles start to tense up around it, the soft tissue constricts around it, even the mind starts to do things to protect that area. So all of those things start to become a type of fixation, where there starts to be less expansion in the area, less movement of energy, and restriction of blood flow, nerve flow, and energy in that area. And the energy is basically tied to the life force. So energy is the fuel or the gasoline that helps fuel the processes of the body, but also of the emotions and of the mind. Because if you think even of depression can actually be the repression of some emotions, or it could be actually a reduction of life force that is leaving the body somewhat depleted, and there's no expansion even within the physical form. And so release is usually about letting go of something from the past, letting go of some sort of fixation, letting go of something that's locked in the body, an emotional feeling, emotional pattern, thought process, repeated thoughts, even, again, opinions or beliefs. And, if I think about like things that I believed, 2 years ago, because everybody's going to believe something. It's just like, how much are you going to invest in those beliefs? And some people can be very rigid with the beliefs, and some people, you go, yeah, I believe it, but when something else comes along, I can let it go because, like, I'm closer to the truth now. And so, if I look back at, like, say, even 2 or 3 years ago, beliefs that I had, they seem almost a little bit embarrassing because, perspectives have changed so much. And so by even looking back at that, you're kind of releasing that old way of looking at things because you have like a newer version of information, or a newer version, a more accurate version of the truth based on the experiences or the information that's come in. And so even when you look and see how beliefs have changed over 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, even that is actually a form of releasing. You're releasing those old ways of thinking, and you're embracing new ways of thinking. And so release can mean a lot of different things depending on what you're looking at or what you're focusing on. But it's basically letting go of fixation. And fixation doesn't necessarily mean that you're constantly thinking about it. It's just something that gets locked in the body, or it's something that gets locked in the emotions. It's a program that just keeps running over and over again, and you break it down and let it go. And so even bringing stillness to the mind is a form of release. You're releasing the chaotic thinking that was there before. And so it can have lots of different manifestations, but the idea is to allow for something new to come in, being that empty vessel, or allowing for more spontaneous action. When you think of conditioning starts to be repetitive, both in emotions and thoughts and behaviors, things that happen in the body. And when you're cultivating like a more spontaneous action activity, or practicing some form of emptiness, you're really undoing conditioning from the past. So even that practice is a form of releasing something. Does that help?
It sure does. Thank you. It's a lot of information, but right on. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, good.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
And then go ahead, Christy, then Ruth.
Hey, Christy.
Hey there. So after this weekend's class, which I think we all agree was quite the class, I noticed that I felt very similar, not as intense, but very similar, like I did after Imaho's fire ceremony. Like that kind of just couldn't even cognate a thought, can't just wander around the house, can't really get anything done. So I just gave myself yesterday the day to recover. I did a lymphatic salt bath, things like that. Today, there's not that physical sensation, but there's just this, it's almost like I can't quite get myself pulled together to, I have to force myself to accomplish something. There's just this, I'm almost in this weird, I don't really know how to describe it, except that it feels like, I'm in this weird zone and can't function quite the same.
Yeah, I know that one well. So one of the things that happens, like when you're doing something like that, basically you're bringing in light to the physical form and into the basic chakra. And so what happens is things get a little bit like recalibrated, so to speak. They get kind of moved around and shifted around. The other thing that I would say is the light that comes in starts to move things in ways that they haven't moved in that way either for a while, or maybe not even before. So it's almost like there's I wouldn't call it life force, but I would call it kind of life force-ish that comes in and accelerates how things are happening, or it's kind of even what I was saying in response to Mary. It's like it's breaking up fixations or areas of stagnation. And so what happens sometimes is it's hard to focus a little bit. It doesn't usually last for very long, but part of it is it's because your internal environment has shifted and changed a little bit. And so, when that happens, I just, I pay a little bit more attention to some of the details, or I give myself like a day or two of like, I'm just not going to focus on things that take a lot of focus for a little bit, or I just spend extra time being a little bit slower and a little bit more present with what's happening. And, I was even kind of talking about that over the weekend about like, being aware of where my feet are at before I get up out of the bed, and then, paying attention to the surroundings a little bit extra when I'm doing things, because, you're really in a more expanded state, and things internally are shifting and changing around. And, you want to accommodate the expansion, but you're also wanting to be able to go with the flow of how things are shifting and changing, and not just trying to get it back to the way that it was. And so basically it accelerates like an evolutionary process. And, the stress response and the mind don't always want to participate. They want it to be like the way that, everything was structured before, and you're kind of rearranging things a bit. But, over a period of time, the mind and the body actually adapt. And so you're just needing to have a little bit of time for those things to adapt for a little bit. But I remember the first few times I was around emo, oh God, I could barely stay in my body. And I was actually vegetarian at the time. And people kept saying, eat a piece of meat. And I was like, no, I'm vegetarian. And somebody gave me a piece of meat, and I felt tons better just because it was a little grounding, And so, if you feel like the expansion starts to be a little too much, you could use some oils that are kind of grounding, like vetiver, spikenard, frankincense, tobacco, something like that, or just do some real like gentle squats, just real super gentle squats, real shallow squats, not deep squats at all, just real shallow. That should be helpful. The other thing that if it's really starting to be a little too much, just do a couple of things that are the thought processes are really concretizing, like, sit and just, read something, make a list, go through and do a to-do list, think about how you're going to plan and structure something. And granted, it might not be the easiest task at the time, but it focuses and gets you kind of back in your body a little bit. And so that's one of the ones that we use, like after somebody has had, not because of ceremony or because of meditation, but like after trauma, it can be very much the same way. You're having a change of perception. And so, got to get that person back in their body, get them a little bit grounded. And one of the ways that we used to do it is to give them, some activity where they had to do like concrete thinking, a lot of detail-oriented thinking. And usually in a short amount of time, that would pull them out of it. But if the schedule permits, I would let it, because you're shifting things around in your internal environment, I would let that happen for a little bit. But if it starts to be a little much, then start using oils that are grounding and do a little bit of the squats, and that will help, physicalize everything and help you to start taking action a little bit more. for me, I tried to schedule my time that like I'm going to be in an expanded state and times where I'm going to be doing things that are really super concretizing. And if I'm doing things like in an expanded state, like I'm not joking, I'm not even allowed to drive the car. Like, because I mean, I get so expanded, I lose the focus, and I have a hard time doing concrete thinking. And then if I'm in my phase where I'm doing concrete thinking, I can do math in my head. You know, I'm able to do all the things that you need to be able to focus on, but being in an expanded state, hard to do. And so it's good to be able to do both. And so, you know, a lot of times we have a harder time accessing that expanded state. But if you're in that expanded state and it's hard to shift out of it, then the grounding oils, the squats, or the concrete thinking will help pull you out of it. But if you can, let it be there for a little bit.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I hope that helps. If you're still having issues with it, let me know.
Yeah, interesting enough, I did work with some benzoin.
Yeah, benzoin's another good one, like benzoin, tobacco, spikenard, valerian, frankincense, probably even like saffron. Vetiver is always good. I used to use vetiver a lot to come back into my body after meditation. I would just rub vetiver on like the base of my neck and on my feet, and it just, man, it would just ground me really super, super fast. And so vetiver is always a good one to use.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ruth.
Hey, Ruth.
There you go. Oh, sorry. You had it and then I made it so you didn't. Go ahead and unmute yourself again. Sorry about that.
Okay. I had a question about mucus. I wanted to know
Sure.
is what you can do to get rid of excessive mucus.
Is it mostly in the nose?
asthma.
Asthma. Okay.
It's in my chest.
Okay.
Like there's a lot of wheezing, and in my nose. Like it's just in my upper. So I just wanted to know if you have any suggestions for that.
Yes. Okay. So how long have you had the asthma?
The mucus or the asthma?
The asthma.
Probably at least 2 or 3 years.
And like you said, not just right now, but like say 6 months ago, was there still some wheezing and stuff?
The wheezing started probably at least 6 months ago.
Okay. So there would be a couple of things that I would do. Does the asthma get worse like with exercise or physical movement?
It's almost like my body has to adjust to the oxygen. Because like when I go outside, if I start walking fast, I can't because I get out of breath. Then when I acclimate to the temperature, then I am able to. So it just depends. Okay, so I have a couple of things. How is your sleep, by the way? You sleep okay? You feel rested when you wake up? Sometimes I feel rested. Sometimes I still feel tired. Still feel tired? Yeah. Okay. And do you ever get nausea? Only if I'm coughing a lot. Okay. And what about like brain fog? You have brain fog a little bit? Thankfully, not as much. Okay, tremendous. Okay, good. Okay, so there's a few things that I'd have you do. Is one would be about 90% of asthmatics have vitamin C deficiency in the body. And what happens is, like, even if you take in foods or things that have vitamin C in it, your body
processes it really quick or doesn't process it and just passes through the body. And so the issue with the depletion of vitamin C is it causes your histamine levels to elevate significantly, right? Significantly. And so we want to reduce the histamine levels in the body. And so just like a tried and true way of trying to address that. And it works like 99% of the time. I mean, 98, 99% of the time is to use quercetin, which you would get from the health food store. And it's basically crude vitamin C. And the reason why it's effective is because it's crude, it takes the body longer to process it, which makes it linger in the body longer. And then the body is able to utilize it, and it actually starts to lower the histamine levels. And so I would take, like at first, I would probably take 3 capsules like 3 times a day. I mean, there's been some really severe asthmatics where we've had them do 3 capsules probably 6 times a day, but you could probably get away with 3 times a day. And then as a little bit of time goes by, you can cut the dosage. Like you can start going down to like maybe just twice a day and then even once a day. But like for the first few days or even the first week, maybe even 2 if it's been there for quite a while, I would do 3 capsules 3 times a day. And you know, you could go on like Amazon, you go into your health food store, you know, it's a very common supplement. So you should be able to, you know, walk into a Whole Foods or a health food store or go on to Amazon and get it very, very quickly. And so that would be number 1. The second thing that I would do is I would take about 400 or 500 milligrams of magnesium. Again, that helps with the spasms in the bronchioles and the respiratory tract. And then I mean, you can do more, but actually, given that you have a lot of mucus and things, I would probably, the third component that I would do would be garlic. Like take about 1,000 milligrams of deodorized garlic. You know, any of the garlics that you get at a health food store are usually deodorized. So, you know, you don't smell like garlic, but you would get the benefits of garlic. And so that would have an expectorant effect on the mucus in both the lungs and in the nasal passage. And then I would do some things to try to dry up the mucus. And so there is an oil called terebinth, and it can be very drying to the mucus, both in the lungs and up in the sinuses. But even when you're talking right now, I can tell you have like a lot of mucus in your nasal passages. Yeah. And so, you know, one of the things you want to do is you want to drain some of that out. And so, again, you have a couple of choices. One is, you know, we were just talking about Goldenseal a little while ago. Goldenseal will break down the mucus and help fight off if there's any sort of infection. But I mean, still, even if there's no infection, it will break down some of the mucus. One of the other things you can do is take like a chamomile, a yarrow, a helichrysum, and like put it on your fingers and then rub it around your ears. You know, really rub it around your ears and into your temples. You can still inhale it somewhat, but when you do that, a lot of times it will open up the sinus passages by making your nose run a little bit. It usually won't last for very long, like maybe 30 minutes or an hour, but it will flush some of the mucus out.
Okay.
The other traditional way of doing it is you can use eucalyptuses, right? But the thing with eucalyptus and with asthma is it might be a little too strong for you right off the bat. So you got to
Right.
get a little acclimated to it. I would do a softer eucalyptus rather than the standard eucalyptus, like a eucalyptus like radiata or polybroct. It's a much gentler eucalyptus, and just inhale it a little tiny bit and then stop.
Okay.
One of the ways, just because it can be a little bit too stifling to the lungs if your lungs aren't used to it. So one of the things that you can do if you're concerned with that, or if you feel too sensitive to that, is green myrtle is a great way to reduce inflammation and get something in without it being like super overwhelming to the lungs and the sinuses, but it would still have a moving effect. And when the mucus is just really thick and heavy in there, I've even used like black pepper, like inhaling the oil of black pepper.
I haven't done that.
Yeah, you can even mix it in with a little bit of the eucalyptus, and it will really kind of help liquefy the mucus. You know, part of the issue is your mucous membranes in your sinuses don't have the greatest blood supply. And so the mucus can get really thick and sticky up there, and it starts to get hard to move.
Right.
And so like something like the black pepper helps to stimulate the blood supply to that area, and it helps move things. The other thing is rosemary. Rosemary by itself can be helpful, but rosemary verbena, or sometimes I say verbenon, but verbena.
Okay.
It's a softer rosemary that would probably be more tolerated by your lungs, and an even softer form of rosemary would be the Tuscan blue rosemary. Like that rosemary is almost like a perfume quality rosemary. So it doesn't really have a lot of the camphor notes to it. It doesn't have the eucalyptus-y smell to it, but
Right.
still very good for increasing circulation to the mucous membranes and helps reduce some of the stress energy that gets stuck in the nose, because your body gets like a stress response with the respiratory tract, and it's not an emotional stress response, it's a physical stress response that will actually cause the sinuses become more inflamed. And so it helps to reduce that and open up the sinuses. Plus rosemary by its nature helps to move blood to the head. So it's getting blood flow to the head, getting to the sinuses. Not necessarily something I would use in my top 10 for treating the asthma, but I think some of your asthma is probably a little bit aggravated by the mucus. And so, you know, if we can reduce the mucus, the best mucolytic in the essential oil world is Anula. It's a little bit expensive though. I mean, it's like, it's a little pricey. And so some of these other choices are a good, inexpensive way to go through and treat that. There is the herbal version that you can use that you would take internally, and you might be able to find that in a health food store, but it's probably easier just to find it online. And that is, it's spelled ELECAMPANE. Yeah. And I mean, that relaxes the diaphragm somewhat, which would help the asthma. And it's very good for breaking down the mucus. It's not going to do it overnight, but it will do it in a couple of days. Now, if you're really just like, you feel like there's a ton of mucus in the chest, especially in the chest, not so much in the sinuses, and you can't get it out, There is, again, another herb called yerba santa. Yerba santa. And boy, that one, you can find tinctures of it sometimes, but like I think Herb Farm makes some. But I'm just going to give you like a warning with this. It will break up the mucus in the lungs, but it makes you cough a bunch. It makes you cough up what's in the lungs, but I mean,
Right.
you'll have coughing fits with it. I mean, it does break up the mucus, but I usually use that as like a kind of a last resort when you're trying to get the mucus out.
Right.
The other thing that can stimulate some of the body's processes, and again, this isn't always very comfortable, is to use the tincture of cayenne pepper and, put it in some water and drink it, or, shoot it down your mouth, however you want to do it. But it will stimulate the body's processes and make you sweat a little bit. And
Right.
sometimes that will make the mucus break free. So there's all that stuff about the mucus in the respiratory tract. The one thing that I would say that we might want to consider in this particular situation is, again, the use of anise or anise, just to have a balancing effect on the autonomic nervous system, because it's something that you are saying, like when you're walking, you have to kind of stop to let your breath get used to it. That's a byproduct of a tight diaphragm, and that's being impacted by the autonomic nerves. And so that's helping to relax the smooth muscle of the respiratory tract, and it's starting to help balance out the nervous system. At some point we'll have to tackle the tension in the diaphragm, but right now I think lowering your allergic response and getting the mucus to reduce is the most significant thing that needs to be addressed. Like those other things are down the line, but right now, if you don't get those taken care of, the other things aren't really going to kind of matter too much. And so I would get the mucus to reduce and lower the histamine level and the allergic response in the body. And then after that, we can refine it over a period of time. But right now, it's almost like 911. You've got some wheezing, you have a lot of mucus, you're having some mucus in the chest, and you're going into colder. What part of the country are you in, by the way?
I'm in New York.
So you're dealing with super cold weather. So yeah, you really got to deal with the mucus quickly, because it's just going to get colder and colder. And
Right.
so yeah, try doing those things, and either let us know next week, or even if it's before next week, shoot us an email and let us know, and we can try to make some adjustments. But we need to have you reduce the mucus quite substantially over the next few days.
Okay. Thank you.
And have you had COVID or anything in the last couple of weeks or month or anything like that?
I had that earlier in the year, like in the beginning of the year.
And was your breathing worse after that, or did it go back
Oh, it
to?
was. You mean afterwards or
Yeah,
during?
after. Yeah.
It was okay. It's just that the last couple of months, I just noticed that my symptoms just got worse. I'd
Yeah,
say
they're
probably
getting
the
worse.
last 3 or 4 months, but I had COVID in like March.
Yeah. So I mean, there would be other things that I would do, but I mean, I think this is a lot to do right off the bat. And so get these things in motion.
Okay.
And many times with just doing some of the supplementation, we're able to reduce the asthma quite substantially, and even get people off inhalers and things. The doctor will just say that they don't need them anymore. I mean, there's always some variations that can come up that might need extra treatment or something, but The reduction of mucus and the reduction of your allergic response is the first thing before we even start looking at the diaphragm and all those other things. Like, let's get those like kind of in check before we start moving on to other components.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Keep us posted. You sound like you feel miserable. Well, yeah, between the mucus and the breathing and everything, you don't sound like you're feeling very good.
No, it's a bit of a strain, at least
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the lungs.
yeah. I can hear it in your voice.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah, I can hear it in your voice.
Yep.
Yeah, keep us posted, okay? Keep us
will.
posted. Yeah.
Thank
okay.
you.
You're so welcome. Okay, I think we need to switch to the other study group for the angels. And so your guys are more than welcome to join us. It is a different link, but shifting gears a little bit. And if you have questions, you can always still email us, or we'll be back next week on next Tuesday. So, but we'll see you in a few minutes on the other link.
And thank you guys. I know a lot of you did type in because you need to keep your questions private. Go ahead and send those over to Calendar. We'll see how fast we can get to them, but so glad you joined us, and I hope you enjoyed tonight, and I hope you can join us for the next session here for the angels. So I'll see you. We are leaving though.